Hi, Christine.
Miss you.
I miss you. The vibes are off today for me.
I know. Are you all right? You look so colorful.
I think I'm trying to manifest brightness in my day with my colors.
You're not doing a great job with your attitude. Not attitude. I didn't mean that sounded really bad.
No, my attitude is very lethargic.
I just mean lethargic,
today.
Right? Not an attitude in a bad way. Just you seem kind of.
I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know why. I think I don't know what's going on. I'm just kind of in a bleh mood, in a funk, I guess.
Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Are you missing your beautiful girlfriend? Is that why?
No.
Are you missing me? Is that why?
That's what it is, yeah. No, what's so funny is as we were talking, I don't know, so Christine and I and Eva were having a meeting before we recorded. I don't know if you noticed, but I pulled this out of my stand. My laptop is on top of a million boxes right now. Oh. And before Allison left, I had been telling her for a while that like I wanted more like notes around the apartment and stuff like that. Like I want like something cutesy. And like we have a good friend, Bethany Watson, who is one of the co-hosts of An Acquired Taste. And one of her love languages is like really creepy love notes to her partner. And I always think they're so funny. They're like they just say like 7 days. Oh. Yeah. No, one of them just said like 7 days. One of them was like, oh, how mysterious life can be. It was
my God.
Very creepy. But I was like, man, that like really like gets my serotonin going. So I was telling Allison about it and I was like, oh, I kind of wish that there were some like, little notes around the house for me and stuff. And so before she left, by the way, Allison is gone for like literally 2 months. We're not seeing each other. And she left a bunch of notes around and I'm like still finding them.
Tell me what they say, please.
One of them was, it's on the fridge already, but the note said, if I were Bethany, these would all be death threats.
That's actually really funny.
And then this one, there have been a few of these, which are currently my favorite ones. It says, time for a Starbucks treat. Text me and I'll Venmo you.
Oh, that's nice. That's not creepy.
No, that one's nice. I'm into it, especially because I get a treat out of it. But because we're on completely different time zones right now, she's asleep, so I can't text her for Starbucks. So
bummer.
Kind of backwards. But anyway, I just saw that and that actually made me feel a little better. So I do miss the Stinky Witch. I wanted to show you something I thought you might appreciate too while we're here. Excellent. Is that in the mail today, I got my new SPR journal. Because they're supposed to come every quarter, but because I'm not in London, I get mine severely delayed. So this is from 2021. And
it came today?
And it came today.
Okay, wait. Tell everybody who doesn't know what the SPR is.
Oh, okay. So it's the Society for Psychical Research, and people like Harry Price, or I don't know if Harry Price was in it, but Arthur Conan Doyle was in it. They hated Harry Houdini. It's been a long-standing, I guess the proper way would say it's like a research lab or a research co-op where they look into supernatural things and scientifically try to either debunk them or see how true to nature they are.
I remember the first time you brought up the SPR.
I do too, and I think that night I joined.
But do you remember? Do you remember when it was?
Yeah, I called it the like physical research or something stupid.
I remember we were sitting in Los Feliz and you were like, you kept saying the Society for Cyclical Research. And
cyclical,
I was like,
that's what it was.
Saying cyclical. What do you mean? And I like could not figure out what you were talking about.
The worst part is my brain translated it to psychical, or it was my brain cannot get those two words to sound different.
Anyway, you said it right every other time, but I remember being like, "What is that?" Anyway, and then you joined it, and then immediately we're like, "It's called psychical." So
yeah, my brain cannot detach it from cyclical. Sometimes I still catch myself saying it for no reason. But anyway, one of the benefits is that they always send you journals of the things that they're currently researching.
How cool is that, by the way?
And so I originally joined because I was like, oh, this gives me good potential future content for the show, because if I see what the SPR is up to, it might, jog
totally
some new ideas. So something I have to look up right now is I guess they're doing work on a lab called an implicit and explicit assessment of morphic resonance. And
sure.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Another thing is the static dynamic model of religious levitation. Oh.
What?
And then they also do like book reviews and things like that. So it's for different paranormal books. So anyway, I thought you might
hello, do they want to
enjoy
write
seeing one.
book review of a little something I like to call a haunted road atlas?
I will let you know these titles seem a little more she than our haunted road atlas.
Oh, you think the levitate? This I literally can't remember one word of the things you just said. I'm trying to like levitate is the only thing I remember.
I actually said cyclical a bunch of times. So say
you might
that's
have
the word.
The way my brain is processing this. You may have because that was a lot of terminology thrown around.
Actually, you know what? Just talking about that made me feel better. So thank you.
Good. Well, I have an idea. Which
my spirits are high. What's that?
Oh, good. Well, that's what we like to hear. And I wanted to throw out that this might actually be a good little recurring segment we could do for our new thing we're doing. I just want to take a minute to apologize to Patreon because I feel like we've hinted at this, but I feel like we've dropped the ball a bit, and it's not necessarily
like entirely.
Yeah, and I feel like we promised a lot of things, and it's always ends up falling by the wayside when shit gets crazy, and we're trying, as always, trying to find ways to make sure we get content to you. And I know some people were not pleased on Reddit and stuff, so we're trying to fix it. Part of the reason was not anybody's fault because got like banned from Instagram, so a lot of that got totally thrown out the window. Well, at that moment.
I would say we were doing pretty solid until the tour came about, and we just got really busy. So
right, which is like the endless excuse, of course. But
I know, but I do think it was certainly not intentional for us to fall off. I think we just got caught up in finally being able to be outdoors and traveling, and it quickly flew right past us.
Well, and we had this great intention with these close friends, and then all of a sudden Instagram lets you add like 100 people at a time, and we had like, I think I still have 6,000 people to add, and it was like, sorry, you've reached your limit for like 3 days, 72 hours. And I'm like, well, what's the point of adding 100 people every 72 hours? I'm never gonna get there. And so it just ended up anyway. The point being here is not to complain or make excuses, but we're trying. Eva was, of course, as always, the genius, the brains behind the operation, who came up with, well, the brains, beauty, and brawn behind the operation.
Oh, sure.
Right? We'll
triple
just give
threat.
it all. Yeah, triple threat. But she came up with the idea of doing like a little bonus segment every time we record so that we don't forget to do extra content. So we already did one. And
they're just little like after bites of us hanging out. They're just little snippets, I guess.
What did we talk about in the first one? I already forget.
I don't
Tattoos.
remember. Fonts. Oh, fonts. Okay.
both of those things.
It's just like 5 or 10 minutes of us just kind of like talking outside of paranormal and true crime stuff, and just more an insight into like our friendship conversations.
They're like, isn't that what we get every freaking episode? But yes,
yeah,
it is.
But shockingly, we try to censor ourselves for this show, and so at the, I guess, behind the scenes is not that it's like the dark, gritty side of our friendship.
But
might
it's
be.
Like I mean,
Who knows?
We did yell a lot about fonts.
It's more of a shockingly somehow more scatterbrained than this, but it's us just kind of free associating, if you will.
It really feels like we're just free associating, but it was really fun to record. It ended up being like 15 minutes, and we talked about all sorts of stuff. And I think Eva even had the idea, like, if we go out of town somewhere, then we can come back and do like a, hey, guess what weird shit happened while we were traveling that we don't have time to talk about on the podcast. So we're trying to do that. And this is not, again, a call to be like, go back on Patreon. This is just kind of a shout out to people who have been patrons especially and have been sticking with us, even though we kind of dropped the ball, and we're sorry, but here's our new plan.
here's a try. Here's a try at it. Why do you drink this week, Christine?
Oh, well, I'm like sad, and
why?
Well, I feel like I'm going to be a little, I've been debating whether or not to talk about this. I always knew I would because I can't shut up, but it's about being a parent, and I'm a little bit sad about it, but it's something I think a lot of people can relate to, which is why I figure I'll talk about it, which is that I think I'm stopping breastfeeding. And, it's something probably some people do not want to hear about, but whatever. It's a normal thing that a lot of people do, so get over it. Or skip ahead. and forget I yelled at you.
Get over it.
Get over it.
Grow up. Breastfeeding is a thing.
It's normal, right? Okay. But so anyway, with all the traveling and stuff, it's been really hard. And now she's learned that bottles are so much easier. And I think we've gotten to a point where I'm like, it doesn't really make sense for me to constantly be like pumping every 4 hours and traveling with it. And it's just been a lot. And she's been doing really well on her formula, like a combo of both for a few weeks. And I think we're just gonna, switch to, she's already, it's almost 7 months old and is starting to eat like real food. So
is that a normal, whatever normal means, time for breastfeeding to end?
So I guess the WHO recommends the first year, and some organizations recommend the first 2 years.
Whoa.
I think it's not common for people to go all that way. Some people do, and even further on. And there's just such a wide, I think
it's just, your baby best.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if it had been easier and I was around much more frequently and not working and having Blaze, I mean, it is nice that Blaze can, and my mom or whoever can feed her without a whole sort of process. But it's a little bit sad. And I don't think I ever thought I would be sad about that. But there's something kind of like, oh, you're losing, like, it feels to me a little bit like I'm losing like a little connection or a little, it's the first like kind of grieving thing. Like I'm putting this part of your babyhood behind us.
She's graduating.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just making me a little bit teary-eyed this week. But I'm okay. But again, now I can drink because,
Have you not been able to drink this whole time because of that too?
Oh, no, I've just been really strategic.
Oh,
I have my ways. I just have been making sure to pump or when we go on tour, then I drink. So I'm like, yay, party time. So that's been how it's going. And then while I'm at home, I try not to if she's eating. But she's breastfeeding less and less. So I'm kind of like, we're finally kind of moving on. And I don't know. I'm sure people will have opinions on this, but, don't listen to other people, everybody. Your baby and your family best. And
she's also got a big ass head, so I kind of think she's like really advanced. I'm like,
her brain must be huge.
I feel like for a 7-month-old, her head is like the size of a 2-year-old. So like maybe her stomach and eating habits are also higher up than just a 7-month-old. You know what I mean? I think she's 95
percentile head and 20% height. So I'm like, that is proportionally quite
she looks
big.
Like I couldn't even tell. Like her head alone is Mr. Incredible, and the rest of her is just like a little stick. So I'm sorry that you feel like you're having a tinge of heartbreak or
it is. It's like a pang, every now and then when I think about it. But it's okay. But thank you. That's
I can't relate, but
I couldn't relate until literally this week, and I was like, what the hell is going on with me? I never thought this was something that would bother me or like hit me.
I mean, I've heard that it's a pretty common experience, but I still don't know as someone who is very sentimental and very nostalgic, I could equate it to like, oh, like this experience isn't going to be an experience anymore and it's just going to be part of my past. So I can understand it that way, but as in a way of like a parent-child relationship.
That's a big part of it. And I think also there's a little bit of guilt, which I'm trying really hard to unlearn. And I think that part is heavily influenced by like breast is best, that nonsense, which fed is best. And we're all going to say it. Okay. However you choose to feed your baby or have to feed your baby, whatever, it's nobody else's business. But I feel like it can get kind of controversial, and so there is a weird guilt, like maybe I messed it up, it wasn't working, whatever. But I think I'm trying to get past that. But then I realize I'm just sad because it's like a chapter that's closing, and I'm like you, I'm very sentimental and like attached to things.
So what's the chapter that now gets to open up though?
Oh, that's a nice way to look at it. Well, today she ate applesauce for the first time.
God, I fucking love applesauce. Her and I can finally bond. See, that's the new milestone.
That's it.
That's the new milestone. When I was in college, I used to, this isn't great, but I don't care. Well, my go-to snack when I was in college is I would just have a jar of applesauce and a straw and just drink it. Like, so good.
You know what I hate?
That story.
Actually, it's you. No, I hate those squeeze pouches only because, hear me out, everybody.
I already know what you're going to say.
What?
Oh, because they're bullshit. Because you get like a slurp and that's it.
You get a slurp. It's 50 calories of applesauce. I'm like, who wants that? I want an entire jar. Thank you.
Also, I know this is disgusting and I'm going to lose a lot of personal fans
Street
over this.
Cred.
Well, I know it sounds gross. But people can
I'm getting my box
knock me all they want. A personal favorite, I guess what other people would call like a drunk food combo, but I've never been drunk. It's just like a college food combo. You don't even have to try it, but just trust me, it's not as gross as it seems. Is chicken nuggets with applesauce.
Oh, I don't think that sounds gross at all.
Oh, really? Okay. I've seen a lot of disgusted people see me like
really freaked out what you were going to say.
The reaction I've gotten from some people warrants me feeling nervous to announce this. I think
like I'm not into that really, but I also A, don't eat meat, and B, I don't like fruit with my like savory food. So I usually
don't either, but it's so good. My ex used to do it.
And she was eat that though. Like
it's so good. I really can't eat chicken nuggets. Like I'm talking like the freezer microwavable chicken nuggets. I can't eat them without applesauce.
Well, I eat the vegetarian ones. I bet I could try that now that I have applesauce on hand. I feel like I wouldn't hate that, Em.
See, once Leona can also eat chicken nuggets, her and I are about to go fucking crazy.
Oh my gosh. Party time.
I'm going to teach her all about the Dunkin'. Oh, she's going to have a good time.
Party time.
Anyway, I'm sorry you're going through some sad things, but also think about all of the chicken nuggets she's about to be able to dip in applesauce.
I don't want to think about that.
If you care about your child's happiness, you're about to be so excited for this time in her life. I'm just saying. It's about to be an awakening.
Thrilled. For you mostly, but also for her.
Funkle M and Leona are going to go to town on some chicken nuggets. Cute. Oh, question. I don't know if this is controversial. Do you plan on your baby being vegetarian?
I don't plan on feeding her meat, so yeah, probably.
Oh, okay. Damn, because I was going to give her the dinosaur-shaped ones.
I think I'm going to but now they make all the vegetarian ones in real fun shapes, too, and personally, I really like them, and Blaze and I eat them, and he's not vegetarian, so I feel like that could be the way to go. Like, we just don't even tell her they're not, quote-unquote, normal chicken nuggets. But, yeah, I don't think I'm going to... Yeah, maybe that is controversial. I haven't gotten into this chapter of parenthood yet, and I feel like everything's controversial, like everything's a landmine.
I feel like you can't do anything right, so you might as well say whatever the fuck you want.
Might as well just feed them dino chicken nuggets all the time.
Yeah.
No, I don't know yet. So my gut is like probably not at home, but I feel like I'm not going to be super strict if she grows up and wants to eat meat. Like that's not my place, you know?
That's one day. Choice. Years and years and years down the road.
I guess.
Well, Funkle M will get the okay first. But if I happen to only have chicken-based nuggets in my freezer and she's having a sleepover at my place, I don't know. It depends on how you feel about it. But if she asked me for chicken nuggets, I'm not going to deny her unless mommy has something to say.
I think I fully support that plan. So you get the A-okay from me.
Ah, you hear that, Leona? Okay.
She's gonna cut this episode out one day and be like, Mom, you promised.
Okay, so let me tell you about this. I have a quick story today. And I say quick because like it's not even a full page of notes. But I have told people that there's not a lot of information on this topic. And that doesn't seem to stop listeners from requesting it.
Okay.
People seem to be very relentless on this. So I'm just going to do it. And if it's not as much information as you were hoping for, just know I tried my hardest.
We know. We believe you. We trust you.
And I feel like maybe you've heard of this before.
Ooh.
Just because I feel like we get tagged in it a bunch. Oh. If not, then that's very exciting because it's certainly worth the banter, I think.
Okay. What is it?
This is a cryptid based in northern Pennsylvania. And it is called the Squonk.
I have no idea what that is.
Okay.
No clue.
Excellent.
Squonk?
Squonk.
Are you kidding me?
So people really want me to talk about it. And it's been happening for like a year or two now.
What?
I've heard your cries and I have been denying your cries because every time I've tried, there's only like 2 links unless you like really open your mind on how you're going to research for this. So
in your mind, what, take a mushroom?
I felt like I was a crazed person typing anything I could into Google to get any information. So here we go. Here is the Squonk. So this cryptid lives in northern Pennsylvania in the hemlock forests. It seems to be exclusively in this area. And it is called the homeliest creature in the world.
Oh, dear.
By one person, it's also considered, quote, the most morbid of beasts.
Has anyone seen a chupacabra? I feel like that's quite a statement to say it's the homeliest creature if you've seen a chupacabra, but...
That's fair. By the way, do you follow the cat on TikTok who's named Chupacabra or something? Choopy?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
What a creepy cat, but I
looks
love him.
Like a freaking, if that thing, no wonder people see sightings. Like if that thing ran across my driveway in the middle of the night, I'd be like, it's
that's
real.
A Chupacabra. Yeah, like cat's name's like Choopy or something, but
yeah.
Also looks like a straight up vampire bat. Like
really wild.
The craziest cat, but I also love him.
Oh, has like a following of loyal fans, yes.
I'm the leader. I'm obsessed with that cat. Choopy, if you ever hear this, meow. Okay, moving on.
Oh, that was nice of you.
So here's back to the Squonk, the other homeliest creature. So in 1910, that is the earliest written account of the Squonk. And it was in a book called Fearsome Creatures of the Lumber Woods.
Ooh.
And this book was written by William T. Cox. And he claims that the Squonks have been exclusively part of Pennsylvania since the late 1800s, more like the late 1800s, more like the early 1900s.
Okay.
So they used to be common in other areas, mainly desert areas. But when their regions became more swampy, the Squonks had to adapt to the water nearby.
Oh.
So the Squonks would go through the marshes, and over time, because they were now having to kind of learn how to wade in the water, over time they evolved webbed toes, but only on its left side.
Oh. So it propels by its left leg?
So here's a quote. On entering the water, it could only swim in circles and never got back to shore.
This sounds like a Dr. Seuss book. Are we sure? Like the Squonk, he can only swim in circles? This really sounds like a Dr. Seuss rhyme.
Well, I'll show you a picture in a second of what the Squonk looks like.
Oh, thank God.
And then you tell me from there. So, and then here's the rest of the quote. Because it kept swimming in circles and couldn't get back to shore, fossil bones dredged from these lake bottoms reveal that thousands perished of starvation in this manner. So
that's fucking sad.
Couldn't get out of the water.
That's horrible.
So, I want to make it clear early on that the cryptid that we're discussing is probably, I would say, 99.99% a silly urban legend that has just kind of taken the area by storm.
Forget chicken nuggets. This is the most controversial thing you've ever said on this show.
I know, but like, let me just, as I explain it, I want you to tell me if you think this is a legitimate creature or not. I think it truly is just like the Frogman, the Loveland Frogman, you know, where it's like, oh, it's like a.
I love the Frogman. I wore my shirt last night. One of our listeners gave us a Loveland Frogman shirt.
Well, I think the Squonk is like Pennsylvania's Loveland Frogman.
I get it.
Or like it's not Nessie, something that people...
the hodag, you know what I mean? Something like that.
The hodag, something like the hodag.
Yeah, I get it.
Mm-hmm. You get it now. Okay. So I only say that because I don't want you to feel too bad that its fossiled bones are coming up from the lakes because of starvation.
I needed to be brought back to reality, so thank you. Thank you.
So that all came from the earliest written account, which was that book in 1910. Another book in 1939 called Fearsome Critters, which is kind of a fun play on the original book, Fearsome Creatures.
Right.
They say that the Squonks originally came to Pennsylvania from the desert regions. Even though they were super swampy and everything, the thing that officially moved them out of these regions and into northern Pennsylvania is because during the timber industry boom, all of their, I guess, logging camps tore up their homes. And so they ended up kind of fleeing to Pennsylvania.
This is sounding a lot like the Lorax. I'm just saying.
It's not. But I see where we're going.
Not the dead fossilized animals. That part got a little heavy, but...
One day I would love to cover a Dr. Seuss cryptid, and you just have to guess which one it is.
I already know. It's the Lorax, probably. Or that terrifying cat wearing that big hat.
The Cat in the Hat. Yeah, you could have just said that.
That's the one. That's the one.
Yeah.
You've heard of him.
Do you have a favorite Dr. Seuss book, by the way? I know a lot of his books have recently been canceled, but he does still have some winners.
Some classics, I think. I've always liked Dr. Seuss just for the, I've always loved the Sneetches. That's a favorite of mine, which I had on VHS tape as a kid. And then I really like the Lorax, but it makes me very sad. What about you?
I always liked, I think my mom would say one of the first books I knew how to read was Go Dog Go.
Oh.
And then what was the other one? One of them, actually, one of my favorites when I was a kid and blissfully unaware of things was one of those like really awful books that got canceled.
The A to Z Zebra is the one that, or at least the one I know of, that has some pretty problematic imagery. And there, some pretty one? It's not great, which stinks too, because like it's quite a good bop, like if you're reading it. I just love the rhyming. I feel like he's one of the most excellent rhymers there is out there.
I think as a child I just only fell onto the rhyming, and that was it. I think it was like the Mulberry Street one or something. I don't remember. Or If I Ran the Zoo, maybe. But
yikes, yeah.
One of those two, I think it was the Mulberry Street one. I remember liking it as a kid. I remember it just always being in my room, so I assume I liked it as a kid, but I don't remember what the story was about it. And I also always liked Bartholomew and the Oobleck because it felt,
that's a good one too.
Paranormal.
It kind of did. So I also want to point out that I'm sorry, but I already have covered a Dr. Seuss cryptid on this show. So.
I know what you've done, but you also covered a Dr. Seuss true crime.
You know what? That's fair. It was quite a crossover.
You know what another true crime Dr. Seuss you could do is Are You My Mother? And it's like the missing mother.
I saw that yesterday at Target and I was like, oh, that one kind of bums me out too. I'm way too sensitive for children's books.
That was another one that I used to read a lot. And I remember that was the first book that ever made me cry because I was like, he can't find his mommy. And I just lost my mind. So.
I can't give that to I'll cry and it'll just cause more emotional damage than even her crying. It'll be like, why is my mom so emotionally unwell?
Well, speaking of emotionally unwell, let's get back to these horrible,
poor fossilized creatures,
homely creatures who only evolved on one side of their body. So this fearsome critter, the Squonk, I'm going to start describing it, and you tell me how you feel about the Squonk.
Okay.
So the Squonk is known to be shy and nervous and hide in plain sight, but they are most often seen as soon as it's starting to get dark out. So right around like dusk.
Okay.
This is apparently when they move the slowest. I don't know why that is or how that is, but they move the slowest as it's getting dark out. So it's easier to find them. And today, the Squonk looks exactly as described since its first account, which is interesting because usually these creatures, their details change over time or people's testimonies of them change over time. But it is still exactly as is, and probably because the story is so stupid short, there aren't a lot of accounts. So
Emma's not having it with all you people who've suggested this.
I appreciate the passion that people have about the Squonk, but I got to be honest, I am used to doing like hours upon hours of research each night, and I feel like I cheated you for only
but I feel like
using
you got
like a couple sources.
A nice little break.
That's true, especially because this is a humdinger, this creature. So,
okay.
And here's why. So the description has not changed since the very beginning in 1910. And here is how the Squonk is described. Its skin is too big for its body, which sags everywhere.
Oh.
And it's covered in hanging moles and warts.
Oh.
And it knows it's ugly.
Oh, well, that's sad.
And because of that, it is constantly heard crying.
Oh my God.
They even avoid bodies of water so that they won't see their own reflection.
Okay, this is getting a little dramatic.
And the Squonks reportedly are known for their infamous low crying.
Do you know what I just thought? Sorry.
What?
I really, for a brief moment there, thought, holy shit, are you doing the Hircine shifter again? And like this whole time you're talking about me, I had like my blood ran cold and I was like, am I supposed to be catching on to something here? I was really nervous. And then I was like, I don't see how Squonk
I have said before in private that you are so ugly you should cry about it, but
I know exactly.
But I have never thought that your skin was too big for your body. So
that part got me off. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Good.
Do you avoid bodies of water to not see your own reflection?
I mean, I avoid bodies of water because I don't have time to shower, which I feel like it goes in the same vein. So maybe.
Fair enough. So they are infamously known for their low voice when heard crying. And their crying has been described in the same book as resembling the call of the cross-feathered snee. Now...
Is that now you can't tell me that's not a Dr. Seuss book.
Doesn't it all sound like the Dr. Seuss? It's about to sound so Dr. Seuss it's going to blow your mind because I was like, what the fuck is a cross-feathered snee? So I looked it up and there was only one reference online and it was from an online cryptid guide called be prepared for the alliteration here. Lenwood's Lexicon of Lumberwoods Lore.
It's just like the same people in the same area kind of writing their own like little world.
It's literally like Dr. Seuss's weird stepkid is just like it's like trying to like steal all of his writing.
So this is just canon within this group of authors. Like this isn't even like, oh, the snee, you know it. It's like, no, nobody does because it's just you three in your own canon you've created.
I gotta be honest, if somebody has the answer, I would love to know it because this is a mystery I could not figure out for you, because why would this guy writing about the Squonk have mentioned the cross-feathered snee when the only reference for it is in a completely different book about lore from the same area and the Squonk wasn't even mentioned in it?
Maybe he's trying to get on that person's good side. Like he's like,
I feel like this is a whole world I accidentally tripped into.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's definitely like these authors are in some sort of scenario. Society of cyclical referencing each other or something.
So I sense the only reference happened to be a guide that mentioned a cross-feathered snee, and it seemed as ridiculous as the rest of this.
Maybe that's his pen name. Like maybe he literally wrote the other book. I'm not even kidding.
Honestly, maybe it was him.
You know, and he's just referencing like his past literary work.
That's true. Like maybe he's like referring to his own stuff. But it is weird that the Squonk wasn't mentioned in the other book. Maybe that's like part of the storyline here.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe he wrote one book to justify another. That's a lot of time.
That's a lot of time. But honestly, brava if that's what he did. Wow.
Here's the wild part of the brava, because if he wrote this whole book just to eventually justify the Squonk. That entire first book that he made in this conspiracy theory we've just created. Mm-hmm. If he made this book just to use it later as evidence, he wrote like 20 pages of this book completely in alliterations.
No.
So I looked up what is the cross-feathered snee because
I can't do this mentally. I'm not prepared. Okay.
So again, the Squonk's crying was it's said to resemble the sound of a cross-feathered snee. So I looked it up, and this is what Lenwood's Lexicon of Lumberwoods Lore had to say about the cross-feathered snee. I'm just going to read it to you. Oh, yeah. And then I'll give you my translation. So if your brain breaks, I've got a better
It's already broken, so I'm glad to know.
Here is the full description. This frost-bitten feathered fowl flutters and flourishes on fashionably frigid and frozen furrows, for it is inclined to the inclement and inhospitable iciness in its immensity. The nondescript nests in natural nooks nearing the nadir of the negatives and is native to the northwest of nowhere and nearly is never noticed by nobody. Naturally, the nudnik is in need of a knoll nearly as non-symmetrical as knowable. After all, this asymmetric avian animal always is aware of any level land lying lengthwise in a linear layout. Unfortunately, unless it is unbalanced underneath, it is unable to be upright, as unluckily its unequal extremities eventually end in edgewise. Effectively, the entity is exceedingly exhausted and entirely exposed in this event.
You are not kidding about this being...
Theodore I think I just Seuss, took mushrooms.
I told you earlier. That's what I thought was happening, and I feel like my theory is correct. Teddy Geisel's like great cousin twice removed is writing this or something.
I think the Lorax like gave me an option between the blue pill and the red pill, and I got cross-eyed.
He literally was like, pick a Thneed, and you were like, you mean a cross-feathered sneed? This is the most batch. I feel like I took mushrooms and I'm having a weird dream and I'm gonna wake up and go, you'll never believe what I dreamt. Anyway,
it's like you took drugs and then now in the middle of your drug trip you are being held in a council where we tell you back all the bullshit you've created. So okay, after all of that weird alliteration, which by the way, again, if this happens to be his other book that he used a pen name for, and he only used it as for evidentiary purposes for the Squonk, he wrote 20 pages like that just to one day justify something about the Squonk.
So we're thinking maybe not. Maybe this is either a different author or he had a really weird phase of his writing that just forgot acid, the Squonk. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it might be two different people, because if it was, can you imagine the first person who worked so hard to do all that alliteration just to be like called a ghostwritten version of another man?
Wait a second, that's my signature style.
So anyway, all of that translation, when I was trying to describe the cross-feathered sneed to you, I translated it for you so you didn't have to. I studied that stupid paragraph for so long trying to figure out what it meant. And this is what a cross-feathered sneed actually is.
Sounds like an AP English essay question, you know?
Here's what it is. It's a snowbird with different sized legs.
Wow. You really should have been on the editing team for this, I think. No offense, Guy Lenwood, but I get it now. Now I follow.
Yeah. A snowbird with different sized legs. So it likes to be on uneven land to match its legs so it doesn't get tired from balancing.
That's really cute.
That's precious, but also why couldn't you just say that?
Listen, he's doing something.
Anyway, people wanted the Squonk and you accidentally got a whole thing about a totally different cryptid.
What year was that book written? The Lenwood's Lore. Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Len was Lexicon of Lumberwood's Lore.
Oh, you mean it didn't auto fill in on Google?
The best part is, so it's fearsome.critters.org. So maybe it was, and that book, Fearsome Critters, came out in 1939. So maybe this is like a digital version of it.
Oh.
The best part is when you are looking for the cross-feathered sneed. It's on part 4 of many. But there's also every single page in there. Here, let me just send you the link. I'm going to send a text to you.
I wanted to know what year, because I was so worried I was offending someone who worked really, really hard on this, and I'm not trying to do that.
Someone certainly did work really hard on this, but I could not even. But it's part of the Unnatural History Museum.
But they're not.
I don't know if they're alive or not. Okay. If they are, let me just say, like, you clearly worked very hard on this and good for you, but I am very confused.
Yeah, I want to make that point that I'm not, I feel bad. I'm not trying to like shame someone, because if we could have written our entire book in alliteration, we would have. It's just something probably we don't know how to do.
Did you click on this?
I did, and
So every single one of them is different alliteration passages.
Okay, here's my favorite that I want you to cover. I'm going to make a bunch of Twitter accounts, like fake Twitter accounts, and start tweeting that you need to do this one. It's called Old Spider Legs, the 8-legged horse. And that's what I want you to cover next. I mean, it's literally 4 lines, so you're going to have a hard time making it a story, but it's something you're going to need to do for me. Okay, I'm keeping this up. You know why I'm keeping this up? Because we're going to have somebody to talk about during our little bonus episode situation.
Okay, sounds perfect. Okay. I like how there's another one at the very end called Ice Worms, and then in parentheses it says again.
Hey, I forgot to mention this other thing. And since this is on a typewriter, I can't really erase. So I'm just going to add some more information, is what I'm guessing.
They're like, By the way, they're back. From the last time I wrote about this shit, they're
from
here.
18 pages ago, I have some more information. Also, last thing I'm going to say is at the bottom of this fucking website, what is this? fearsomecritters.org. It's literally a quote by Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ. I'm like, well, why is that the quote?
What's the quote?
There's don't worry about them. They are blind leaders, and when one blind man leads another, both fall in the ditch. Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ, comma, Christianity. In case you're wondering the source, it's Christianity.
I'm telling you, this website is unstable.
I've never cared about anything as much as I care about this website.
I mean, like, I don't understand. I would love to meet the person who came up with any of this, just to be like, I think you're me in 30 years. But
I was going to say, time travel is real.
Check.
M has somehow come back in time to read their own fucking work on this podcast.
Parentheses, again. Okay, so anyway, all of that to get back to the Squonks.
Okay,
sorry everybody.
Sorry.
We could really hypothesize on that as long as we wanted, but I don't think we can.
We'll figure it out. We'll do it in our After Dark special.
Our after hours show. So, okay, so all of that, just to let you know that when the Squonk cries because it knows how ugly it is, it sounds like the cross-feathered snee, which, by the way, after looking up the cross-feathered snee, I learned nothing about what it sounds like.
Yeah, so, I was going to say, how is that helpful at all?
Apparently it sounds like a snowbird with different sized legs. So you figure it out from there.
Which sounds like a squonk, so really it doesn't make much fucking sense. Talk about cyclical. Like, that's so nonsensical. Okay.
So, okay, so the Squonks, they cry about how ugly they are, and they avoid having to look at themselves out of shame. This is also where people start referring to the Squonk as the most relatable cryptid. Because
I mean, I get it.
A lot of people on TikTok, if you were to type in Squonk, any video you click on, just read the comments and you'll die laughing every time. Because everyone is like, apparently I'm a Squonk. Today I found out that the cryptid hunters need to be looking for me.
Oh, I love that so much.
So they can allegedly be tracked down by Squonk hunters, if there ever were one, because in their trails and the tracks that they leave, they are always left wet with tears.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the left one is webbed, but I guess they're left with tears. Okay.
See, that's how a scientist thinks. We're not here for that today.
I'm so sorry. I looked at this too analytically. I get
No
it.
detectives on this case.
We're looking for some salty tears in the footprints.
Just look for a puddle of tears. It's at this point that I would like to mention that in its original book, a quote for the Squonk was that its fearsome aspect is its contagious misery.
Which, so sad.
By the way, relatable. So
contagious misery.
So the only way you can find one is by following its trail of tears.
Oh.
But fun fact, if you do find one and corner it, Squonks are known to escape by literally dissolving into their own tears.
Oh my gosh. What a drama queen.
So the original author, William Cox, he gave Squonks their own taxonomy classification.
Can you do that?
I guess if you just say it enough and no one else is stopping you, yeah. So the classification for a Squonk is Lacrima corpus dissolvens, which is Latin for the words tear, body, and dissolve.
Okay, now. All right, everybody.
In fact, there are some substances that are, this is true, apparently. There are substances that are, quote, stable in solution, but cannot be isolated without catalyzing their own polymerization. AKA, just like Squonks and how they dissolve into their own tears, there are some chemical substances that liquefy into themselves.
Whoa,
so
creepy.
These are allegedly known as chemical Squonks. It's the science community.
No, wait, really?
That's what they tell me.
Who? This man on Jesus Christ Nazareth website?
Jesus of Nazareth told me himself. Christianity. Dr. Seuss told me in riddles, so.
This show is so stupid.
So in 2015, there was a guy named Hal Johnson, and he wrote an updated version of Fearsome Creatures, which was the 1910 one. And he better described the squonk, or more, he described the squonk in a way we hadn't seen before, where he basically decided that squonks are just gnarly looking pigs.
Oh, okay.
They have crooked yellow tusks. They have 4, but sometimes 3.5 legs.
Oh.
And I don't know. And they have, quote, cauliflower ears covered in wax and hair.
Oh my.
So,
what
a real looker.
What a charmer, yeah.
And the only documented squonk capture is by a man named Jean-Paul, or J.P. Wentling. Okay. I think he actually happened to know Hal Johnson. So Hal Johnson, in his book, wrote about his friend J.P. Wentling catching a squonk. And JP was able to catch a squonk by coaxing it into his bag after making squonk sounds, which is the sound of a snowbird with weird legs. So
classically, I mean, we all know this, obviously. Okay, got it. We're learning.
So your motivation is snowbird, different size legs, make the sound if you were to call a squonk out from behind a tree.
You know, and if it has 3.5 legs, it also is kind of crooked like that bird. So,
oh yeah, so that actually makes sense. Maybe it does always have different size legs if you only have 3.5 of them.
Right, I'm sensing a similarity here.
Anyway, I don't know what the sound was, but I'm assuming my go-to would be a crying sound, because if people know the squonk by its crying, then
yeah, it said a low pitched.
Yeah, I would just sound like, but that's not what a bird
oh my god,
would sound
I think I just heard a fucking bird. What is it called?
Cross-feathered sneeze.
I think I just heard a feathery sneeze somewhere in my house. Help!
Why are you saying it like that? So JP coaxed him into the bag, and as he was carrying the bag home, he realized that the sound of crying had stopped, and the bag got lighter all of a sudden.
Oh no.
And he opened up the bag and found nothing left but a bubbling puddle of tears. The classic quick getaway, if I am not mistaken.
That's the most Em and Christine getaway ever. I've dissolved into my own tears. Okay.
Just cry until you don't exist anymore.
So emo.
Honestly, why hasn't the squonk just been called the most emo animal there is?
It feels like you're doing Hircine Shifter Part 2, and I'm still not fully convinced you're not. So I'm just
I gotta say, I'm not covering the anomaly, as it were, but I sure wish I was. So, you know what someone said to me recently? Because I was telling them about America's Hircine Shifter. And they were like, the fact that you're the only paranormal podcaster on a regular texting basis with a cryptid is so cool. And I was like, wait a minute.
You could write your own fucking lexicon. I don't know why you have it, quite frankly.
I could write it in my own words and then translate it into, like, I could get help from the shifter who could just, like, write it in riddles.
Encyclopedia of...
The Emcyclopedia.
The Emcyclopedia. Listen, we're going to ghostwrite this together.
And it'll be bilingual, because it'll be in my language and yours.
Certainly.
And it will just be in rhymes, so you have to figure it out on the way, like we do.
God. We're going to change the world.
Whether or not we want to. So, in case anybody needs to know, by the way, that was the only documented capture we have, but it was also written into one of the only few accounts we have of the squonk. And in case anybody needs to know, the squonks do reproduce asexually with binary fission, which is when
I needed to know.
When one body splits into two bodies, and it just keeps replicating.
Dissolving into itself, so I wouldn't put it past it.
It does have a superpower that is being very overlooked right now.
Right?
It, like, becomes liquid. It's like the secret world of Alex Mack.
Ooh.
Vintage.
Love
vintage
this.
nod right there.
Throwback.
So, fun fact, besides the fact that the squonk does reproduce... There is a touring performing arts troupe from Pittsburgh, which makes sense because they're within squonk territory. So there's a performing arts troupe named Squonk Opera. And I think they might just be called Squonk online now, but if you type in Squonk Opera, you get all the same links. And this is like one of the craziest touring performing arts groups I've seen. They like... every few years they put out a different performance, and then they like travel to many venues. I think it was like over 250 venues they've been to. The current one that they're doing is called Hand to Hand, and they have like the world's largest puppeteer hands, and they pull strings so all the fingers move differently, and then they I think they perform with these hands while there's also some like psychedelic music playing behind it.
Whoa.
It's very odd, but if you look up Hand to Hand Squonk opera, I don't think you'll find anything else besides what I'm talking about.
Go to Squonk_official on Instagram, because that will get you there. Also, were they seriously on America's Got Talent?
Probably. They're pretty big, apparently. I was unaware of how big they were.
Squonk. I wonder if that's why people keep like sending you to it, you know?
Maybe, I don't know, but apparently Squonk Opera is the thing, and they've been around for a long time too. Wow. So if you go on their Wikipedia, you can see a list of all of their previous shows, and like the one before Hand to Hand was like all about air, and like it was like they had like a whole show about air. It's very wild.
Oh my gosh, this
Squonk
is wild.
Opera is really feeding up to its name. I think you can't be called Squonk Opera named after a cryptid so odd and not have some weird shit in your group. So good for them.
I mean, I'm all about it for sure.
And then another fun fact is that Squonks back in the 70s had a few songs written after them. So this isn't maybe it's a relatively new cryptid that people care about. I mean, I guess it's technically been around since 1910, but I don't even know if that book is real, to be honest. The fearsome
it's real creatures. To me.
Okay, fair enough. But the only references I've seen for it have been in song lyrics from the 70s specifically. But they were also like big groups, like Steely Dan and Genesis had songs about the Squonk. So there's one song from 1974 by Steely Dan and a song called Any Major Dude Will Tell You. And here's one of the lyrics.
Okay.
Have you ever seen a squonk's tears? Well, look at mine. The people on the street have all seen better times.
Whoa. Okay, so we're really leaning into like hashtag relatable with this creature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole point I think was just to compare the Squonk to himself in a time of crisis.
So emo.
The first lyric of the song is my favorite, and it's something I just want to start texting you for no reason.
Oh no.
I feel like he was either talking to the Squonk in this lyric or to himself, or maybe me talking to you.
Oh, here we go.
Here's the lyric. I never seen you look so bad, my funky one.
Ouch. God.
I've never seen you look so bad, my funky one. And I feel like I'm at least going to start calling you my funky one.
I mean, I feel like if you texted me that, I'd be like, yeah, you know me so well.
Anyway, and then it just goes on to reference the Squonk's tears. So that's Steely Dan. And then 2 years later, in 1976, there was a song by Genesis literally called Squonk.
What?
And the entire song, all the lyrics are just about the perspective of JP catching a squonk. So like the story of him catching the squonk, and then he like the bag feels lighter and he looks in and it's disappeared into tears. And the whole story, which by the way, I now know that means my information is wrong somewhere, because I thought that's the story of JP came from a book that was written in 2015. But if this song came out in the 70s.
Oh yeah.
So something's off in my notes, but whatever. So this is these are some of the lyrics from the song Squonk by Genesis. All the king's horses and all the king's men could never put a smile on that face. He's a sly one, he's a shy one. Wouldn't you be too? Stop your tears from falling. The trail they leave is very clear for all to see at night. Now listen here, listen to me. Don't you run away now. I am a friend. I'd really like to play with you. Making noises my little furry friend would make. I'll trick him, then I'll kick him into my sack.
What?
You better watch out. You better watch out. I've got you. You'll never get away. Walking home that night, the sack across my back, the sound of sobbing on my shoulder, when suddenly it stopped. I opened up the sack, all that I had, a pool of bubbles and tears. Just a pool of tears. Just a pool of tears. And all the while, in perfect time, your tears are falling on the ground.
So, does this mean I could be a famous musician? Because, like, really? That's the lyrics? Okay.
Those are the lyrics, and it's like a 6.5-minute long song.
Holy shit.
I listened to the whole thing, and it was
it a bop?
fine.
Oh.
It was fine, but in the comments, every single person was like, this was the best song Genesis ever put out. And so I wonder if it's like like only real fans even know about that song.
It's a deep cut. Yeah. I see.
Anyway, that is the story of the Squonk to the best of my ability, folks.
That was one of the wildest and most entertaining stories you've ever covered. I am beside myself. I'm glad it did not end with, wow, Christina, I can't believe you didn't catch on, because part of me was convinced.
Honestly, I totally understand why you would think I was referring to you, because everyone thinks the Squonk is referring to them, to be fair. But also, it really does sound like it was just like a bad hallucination out of a Dr. Seuss book. It sounds
like
wild.
A dark version of Dr. Seuss.
And if anyone can solve the mystery for us on who the hell Lenwood is of Lenwood's Lexicon of Lumberwoods Lore, I would love to know, is he or is he not the same person who wrote these fearsome creatures books?
We gotta know. And I'm gonna save this because I cannot wait to talk about where to go. Here you go.
By the way, you never looked at a picture of the Squonk.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Just give him a quick googs.
Okay. Squonk.
Just so you know why he was crying.
Oh, buddy.
He's very sad. And he's very...
Poor buddy.
He looks as described.
He looks so sad, this little Squonk.
Every picture of him is literally just tears pouring out of his eyes.
Wait, I'm getting like emotional. I need to not.
If you're not real, then why do I feel this way?
I am not mentally stable enough to be looking at these photos. I'm sorry. I can't.
Let's put it this way. You can take a guess at what he looks like, and you can feel confident in it knowing that Christine has already fallen in love with him. So.
I feel like I'm just upset and I need to take him home and give him a little bit of love, you know?
Okay, you do that.
All right.
I'm going to sit over here without that responsibility on my shoulders.
Well, after the episode, I'll tell you more about the bear behind.
What in the world?
That's one of the things in this lovely book, by the way.
Oh, hey. All right. I'm excited.
All right. So I have something very special for you today.
Oh.
And I hope that you appreciate it because it's probably the first and last time ever that I will remember a request you make and actually follow through with doing the story on an upcoming episode.
Okay, wow. So 272 episodes. 272 episodes of requests. What could I have asked for in that time?
The story. This is the information about Hybristophilia.
I didn't ask for that.
I'm gonna tell you what it is, and you're gonna change your mind.
Okay.
The APA, the American
psychological
association definition of Hybristophilia is as follows. Noun. Sexual interest in and attraction to those who commit crimes. In some cases, this may be directed toward people in prison for various types of criminal activities.
Yeah, I did want this. You're totally
right. Good. Because I was
this is the phenomena of people falling in love with like Ted Bundy and thinking he's hot and like the weird sexualization around serial killers and stuff.
110%.
Okay.
So
I'm so excited. Wow. I really wish you could have told me earlier in the episode that was what we were covering because my spirits needed it and now triple lifted. I'm so excited.
This is a good one. I'm going to just go out and say it. This is a good one. This is a wild trip that I went on here.
This episode really turned accidentally into, I think, one of my favorites we've done.
Oh, that's fun. I feel like I just hope everyone agrees is what I'm going to say, but who cares? I love that I talked about breastfeeding in the early part. So if we ever recommend this one, people are going to be like, why is this the one that you think I should listen to?
The wide gamut that we are able to cover every week is amazing.
From A to Z zebra, you know what I mean?
We've got range, and more range.
Endless range. Okay. So here's a more detailed definition of hybristophilia from Wikipedia. Hybristophilia is a sexual interest in and attraction to those who commit crimes, a paraphilia or sexual disorder in which sexual arousal, facilitation, and attainment of orgasm are responsive to and contingent upon being with a partner known to have committed a crime.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And you know what? I feel like I asked for this, well, for a few different times, but this particularly reminds me of a couple episodes ago when we were talking about the woman who was married to like the chessboard guy.
That's the one where you asked if I could cover it.
Because I remember being like, "What is the deal? Like,
what's going
like,
on?
Are you okay? Should we like be paying attention to you for red flags?"
Is no. First of all, not okay.
Okay.
Not okay.
Okay.
But yeah, I feel like this will answer some questions. It's still kind of a widely misunderstood phenomenon, or not misunderstood. I wouldn't say that, but it's a not fully understood phenomenon, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So according to a Medium piece that I found by a writer named Bad Bunny Pubs, quote, "It is not a clinically recognized mental illness within the ICD-10, and hybristophilia predominantly affects women." So that is notable because most of the examples we have are women kind of lusting after male murderers. Can I guess?
Of course. Is it some sort of like a sense of being protected that they know that this guy could like really do some damage if someone tried to hurt them, and like if they cared about them, like,
you know, maybe that doesn't really come up, I don't think, but that is an interesting
mean, I know that's like we're talking about this as if it's not like a really disgusting, horrible topic, but I'm trying to think
trying to get into the mind of that person. Yeah.
Yeah. And like if this person has already proven time and time again that like they can't be touched physically, then like if you're with them or if they cared about you only, then like you also couldn't be touched.
Well, I don't know if this counts as that, but what it reminds me of is one of the theories that this is kind of an expression of masculinity, maybe. So, you know, outbursts of rage, kind of an abusive, angry, and what some might refer to as a masculine energy. And some people theorize that maybe that's what people are attracted to, the domination, that kind of thing.
Sure.
So maybe that would be part of that, I assume. Like, oh, and therefore they like me, so I'm protected, perhaps.
Interesting. I don't know. I mean, I would never be able to know until today. So,
but that's a great theory. So, in pop culture, the phenomenon is also known as Bonnie and Clyde syndrome because, like, Bonnie was in love with Clyde, and why he's murdering people, etc.
I see.
So, some classic examples, which you've already mentioned, include the groupies of Ted Bundy. That's a big one, and I'm actually not going to go into detail on that today, but the one I am going to go into detail on is Richard Ramirez and his groupies.
Oh, see, that's even, I don't know why that's more fascinating to me. I think because with Ted Bundy, I feel like one of his, I don't even want to call it like a power or a pro to his personality that worked in his favor, at least, was that he was charismatic and like charming. So I feel like it makes sense to me why some people, like, I can justify in my head almost why they're getting swindled and forgetting the bad parts of him. But I feel like in my mind, Richard Ramirez is more like unhinged. And so,
yeah.
So I feel like it's even more fascinating to me of like, he's not doing anything to make you.
I don't know. Some people really think Richard Ramirez is hot stuff. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, he was missing a bunch of teeth, so that part, not so much. But once he got his teeth fixed, or if he's closing his mouth, he's not a bad looking dude. And I think people jumped aboard that train.
Am I thinking of a different person? That maybe it's Charles Manson, but I feel like Richard Ramirez in interviews seemed like really frenetic, or am I thinking of a different person?
Well, he probably was. I don't know what his energy was. I guess I'm just thinking of like purely looks from photographs, so I'm not sure. But yeah, it kind of doesn't matter. Like it's literally anybody.
Gotcha.
Anybody who has gotten to a certain point in their violence and public notoriety seems to attract at least a few of these people.
That's so weird. I had no idea that certain things wouldn't matter versus other things. Huh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to keep interrupting you. I'm just so jazzed.
And it's the same thing that you said of it's a pretty short story, so feel free to like ask questions if you have any. And then the only other example I was going to say is Jeffrey Dahmer was the other one that tended to get quite a few groupies. And most of us know that those guys have groupies, but there are some more modern examples, which I think to me was more disturbing. And I don't know if that's just because like, oh, Ted Bundy, like everyone already knows that, eye roll, that people find him attractive, whatever. But some of the more recent examples include Chris Watts, who murdered his wife Shanann and his two daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste. And that was episode 198 if you want information on that. Yeah, he has fucking groupies and people in love with him who want to marry him, etc.
Oh yeah, didn't he get remarried in prison or something?
I don't know offhand, but it's entirely possible.
I feel like a weird amount of them do.
They do. And then there's Scott Peterson, who was convicted of the first-degree murder of his pregnant wife, Lacey Peterson, and the second-degree murder of their unborn son, Connor. And those were episodes 242 and 243. And I don't know what it is about these two that are just more kind of impactful, and I think it's because pulling them into a more like modern time period drives home the point that there are people who truly admire and lust after people like this who it's not just like, oh, teenagers being quirky online and saying like Ted Bundy was cute. It's like, no, this person we know smothered his two daughters and you're still attracted to him.
It's one of those things that we've covered before. I don't know if we've really covered it, but we have discussed it before where certain stories, even though it's unfair, there is something in the human psyche that happens, I think, where like some stories feel less real because so much time can separate us from it.
Yes, yep.
But which again is not fair because 300 years ago, someone was suffering just as horribly as someone is today. But it just doesn't feel as real in some way. And I think to know that there are people either our age or someone we know, someone we could be eating dinner with or texting is someone who is able
who
to
have been affected by this who are alive. So like Shanann's family and like those two little kids who probably have playmates and you know what I mean? It's
especially with social media and that those family members can accidentally run into people who think like, hey, that guy's super hot.
That's the thing. Exactly. Oof. That's exactly it. So it just made me kind of ill. And the part about this too is like Chris Watts and Scott Peterson killed their wives. And like as much as Ted Bundy and Richard Ramirez, Jeffrey Dahmer are like the fucking scum of the earth, why would you as a female partner be looking at this person being like, I want to marry you when he's very openly murdered his wife and children? Like that part is also baffling. It's like, you'd think that at least logically would prevent you from taking that step of like, hey, why don't I reach out and meet up with you? But alas, it's still very much a thing. So according to a YouTube video by Dr. Todd Grande, the warden of San Quentin received over 30 phone calls of women interested in Scott Peterson within a day of him being incarcerated there.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I wonder what those people would do if they like came face to face with someone who was actually affected by things that Scott Peterson did, like
that sounds like a terribly exploitative Dr. Phil episode that probably exists somewhere. Like, we're going to bring out this person's family members,
Yeah.
I wonder too. And I have some examples of like when shit goes wrong. So we will definitely get there. There was another YouTube video I watched called True Crime Community on TikTok ... Yikes by Sarah Hawkinson. And she basically calls out like pretty cringe TikToks that are like glorifying serial killers. And I know not everyone's going to agree with us or me on this one. I am not a fan of kind of turning serial killers into like home decor or like funny products.
I'm glad you said that, because I was wondering when I could insert that into this conversation. Of there's like a shirt that says like, "Eat me like Dahmer," and it's like, what? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's to me so. I don't even know the right word.
It just feels tasteless.
It's so tasteless and so cruel and senseless. Like, why would you do that? If you even think for a minute in an empathetic way about someone else, you would not find that to be funny. But I mean, maybe I'm just a square. I don't know.
I think maybe, I don't know if we're just like aging out. I don't know. I don't want to like say like a whole generation, things like that. I do feel sometimes like I'm like, you know, the wet blanket in the room by being like, that's not very funny. And by the way, I also am wildly aware of our position as two people who entertain by talking about true crime.
And that's where it's hard. Yeah.
Because I've had people mention in front of me, whether they knew I had a true crime podcast or not, they've been like, yeah, like there's like I really struggle listening to true crime podcasts because there really is a weird balance. I can't totally get behind the fact of telling stories at families' expenses. And I fully understand. I mean, I'm literally a true crime podcaster and reconcile with that every day of like, oh, like this is my job, but I want to make sure I'm doing it respectfully and not disrespecting anybody. But I know exactly what you're talking about the products that are like on Etsy every now and then, where it's like, I can't think of any right now, but
there's a Jeffrey Dahmer like kitchen. It's a meme that goes around pretty regularly of like a kitchen decked out in Jeffrey Dahmer stuff, you know, because it's like, oh, like the dish towels say, you know, I don't know it off the top of my head, but like, and whatever, I'm not gonna, you know, go in and yell at you or what, or judge you or whatever, but from my perspective, I personally just don't get it.
I don't get it either, and I hope we don't sound hypocritical as we have a true crime podcast, but if you happen to also have a true crime podcast, or I've had a lot of people come up to me, I don't know about you, Christine, but I've had people say like, oh, we're starting our own true crime podcast. If we can pass on any wisdom to you, I don't know if we're the right people to do that, but please make sure that whatever you do is respectful. And if you are going to try to do it with levity like we do,
that's the part that's hard too. Yeah.
That's the part that's hard. I like to think that most of the jokes or humor come from things that do not have to do with the victims in our stories, or at least that's what we aim for. And if we ever do anything wrong, always check us. We will always be open to criticism on that. But if you're thinking of doing that yourself, or what type of content you might want to listen to, I'd always suggest the people who are trying their best to do this respectfully. So,
yeah, no, I totally agree. And I would say most of the shows I listen to are trying to do that respectfully, including myself. I definitely try, and like, you're not going to succeed every time. And so I am well aware there are probably times where I've maybe not done the most due diligence. I mean, in recent years, at least, I've really tried. So always feel free, like, to, you know, call us out or whatever, what have you. I think the most validating messages that I get are when, like, a couple times Eva has forwarded emails to me that are from victims' family members, and they say, thank you for spreading the word. There, you know, that's not happened often, because I don't
and we don't expect that either.
No, of course not. But, you know, and I don't expect that most victims' family or friends are like listening to this kind of thing. But, you know, for those who are able to sit through that and kind of discern it just felt very validating. Like, okay, at least I'm not totally delusional that I'm like, especially with missing persons cases, trying to do something helpful, and I'm not, you know. And so anyway, I know everybody who is listening is like, yeah, that's why we're here. So I
know. It's just a weird sticky spot that this conversation puts us in, that we should be able to discuss. I mean, we're true crime podcasters, and for us to not be able to talk about it would be really, I don't know, insincere, or
insincere is a good way to put it.
And I do think back on some of our earlier episodes before I don't know, grew up. And like, I still think about some things I said in early episodes where I'm like, ooh, I'm not proud of that. And so I hope every day people know that we're trying to better ourselves and not be horrible people. I like to think we're pretty solid people and on top of being as respectful as possible. But I certainly turned this into a conversation about us by accident, but I also felt like it was important to address. So I'm sorry I totally intervened on your story, Christine.
No, it was no, but that's exactly where I was going. Is I mean, okay. I knew what we were going to bring up because it's sort of like, you know, we find this a lot in our, and I don't want anyone who's like, oh, I thought that meme was kind of funny to feel like, oh, we're like, get out, you're a horrible person. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just, I think also being so deep in this content, I think maybe 10 years ago I would have been like, oh, that's funny, you know, and not thought about it. I really do. I think it's just being so deep in this and watching interviews and reading people's testimonials makes it so much harder for me to like
and on
find
top of that
funny.
And on top of that, having our own audience looking to us on how we're going to discuss it. So it's from all angles. I think I like to think we're as hyper vigilant as we can be. So
and you know, there's also, in my opinion, a line between dark humor, which I fully appreciate. It probably doesn't sound like I do, but dark humor and, you know, like, oh, this is actually pretty hurtful.
Yes.
And so, you know, there's that line too, which again is not something I can delineate right now, right here.
When in doubt, if you're looking at a meme or listening to content or trying to make your own content, maybe just always ask yourself every 5 seconds, would the victim's family be cool with this?
That's what I always think of, like, is put yourself in the person's shoes. That's at least, I do the same thing, like as far as how to determine if I'm like, why, or even why I'm like kind of icked out by something. Sometimes I'm like, why does this kind of rub me the wrong way? And a lot of times it's that. It's like, I wouldn't want anyone affiliated with this crime to see this.
Right. Anyway, we have totally rambled. I apologize, Christine,
free
but
speech,
it was important.
Yada, yada. I get it. I know. I'm not stupid. I know that probably a lot of you don't, not a lot of you, but I'm sure some of you don't agree with me, and that's totally fine. That's why people have different interests. And, you know, I've been called a square many times in my life, so it wouldn't be the first time. But anyway, this isn't all going to be about that. So let's get back on track.
Just needed to do the PSA before we got into this. It would have felt some version of hypocritical,
disingenuous, a little bit hypocritical. Yeah, exactly. No, exactly.
To talk about it and not address the fact that we are also in this
for
boat,
a living. So. Exactly. And you're right. I do wrestle with that a lot. So it's definitely worth mentioning. And if any story is going to bring it up, it's probably this one. So some of the examples that Sarah and Sarah Hawkinson, who did this YouTube video, which is about the true crime community on TikTok, makes a couple really good points about that line between dark humor and fetishizing serial killers, basically, which is really interesting. And I think if you watch the video, it's worth watching. It's not very long, but she calls out these TikToks that are pretty cringe, and some examples just to give you an idea of some of the stuff that's out there that people, I guess, are amused by. And if you're wondering, like, oh my God, am I the one who's doing? Probably not. Some of this stuff is really extreme and fucked up, and like, I'd like to think most of our listeners are on this side of things, but you never know. So some of the examples are
if it does happen to be, if we list something that you are, maybe this is a learning opportunity to unpack something. I don't know.
Yes. Oh, exactly.
Respectfully, it's a learning moment for all of us.
Respectfully, maybe it's at least a moment to step back and consider things, as Em and I have learned many times over the past 5 years to step back and look at how we handle things or entertain ourselves. So some examples she shows. There are a few point of view TikToks that say things like this. POV. You wake up and all you can do is try to hold your breath. And it's a video of somebody looking out of a bathtub underwater, and then they turn on the faucet. And it's like...
So it's like a simulation of someone getting murdered.
Yeah, it's sort of like point of view. You're in the bathtub looking out, and I turn on the faucet. All you can do is hold your breath. And like comments on some of the TikToks include, I volunteer to be the next victim because the person is like a good looking guy. And so that's kind of the whole shtick is, it's like a Dexter phenomenon.
I'd give it all.
You know?
I'd sacrifice it all for this hot guy.
Yeah,
but it's really like you're volunteering to get murdered and not thinking about the people who have been murdered this way. Yeah.
And exactly. And so and she makes a good point. Like those are different too, because it's not like they're saying, oh, this specific serial killer with real victims is super sexy. You know, it's a little bit different. It's sort of like, but it's
a removed gray space.
It's removed, exactly. So it's still, I mean, to me, it's disturbing, but whatever. Here's an example of a comment that I thought was interesting on her YouTube video, and this is kind of, I think, gets to the bottom of why I feel icked out by some of this stuff. So this user called GM commented, imagine having a life ripped cruelly and painfully away from you, and then having some people on TikTok either making fun of what happened or glorifying the one who killed you. And I think it's like the glorifying the one who killed you part that just resonated with me, because there are a lot of people, it used to be Tumblr, now it's Twitter, who are like Ted Bundy stans and just think he's so hot, and it's almost like a quirky personality trait to have. But I feel like if you have that empathetic ability to just like think about, what if this were your aunt who was killed, or your sister, or you know, it just seems like there's a lack of
awareness
or at least like thinking
introspection. I don't know.
Yeah, or empathy even, just like thinking about not just the joke of it or not just the like quirkiness of it, but like the people who might see this. And
we mentioned this earlier, but I wonder if that's because certain people like Ted Bundy. I don't know about the Scott Peterson or the Watts family situation, but like Ted Bundy does feel relatively removed, and so it's easy to ignore the storyline or think of it as more of a fiction. It's really easy to think of it as fiction, and so you can also, because something that terrible shouldn't happen, so it's hard for a brain to process unless you've lived through that world. Absolutely. that this has really happened.
And
to
I
somebody.
think that becomes difficult when it is the world of true crime, and you're like, well, you watch shows like Dexter, and it's like, oh, well, you're watching a fictional show, but then you watch Dateline, and it's like, but this really happened, and you have to kind of find the nuance between. And again, like a lot of these people commenting are young and teenagers, and I'm sure I said stupid I know.
We all did.
We all said stupid shit. So I'm not trying to say like, wow, I'm so above this and I've never done this. But like, you know, it's just something I think worth shedding a light on.
I think we're also, as we mentioned too, I think our sensitivity to this is more heightened because we feel responsibility to be on the right side as best as we can. So maybe the things you're listing, like only you and I will react to, but hey, at least we're reacting, I think, in the right way of like, oh, like that's a little too cringe.
It's a little much. And honestly, hold on, because I think even if you and I are reacting to these, it gets pretty, I'm just going to say batshit crazy. Some of this stuff gets out of control, bonkers. And it becomes almost like just a fascinating psychological study almost of people of like what on earth is going on in their brain. So obviously Ted Bundy, like you said. Oh, and one thing about Ted Bundy too is like a lot of the photos are black and white. That alone removes it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like that alone makes it feel like you're not really part of it. And the danger is removed. I feel like that adds a lot of there's just a lot of nuance between that and like Chris Watts, like you said.
Yeah.
So I'm going to focus on two serial killers today, and they're hybristophiliacs, which are people who are suffering from, this illness.
Sure.
So the main focus will be Richard Ramirez, and that was episodes 217 and 218. And Richard Ramirez is also known as the Night Stalker. It's one of those stories that really has stuck with me. I feel like some of them kind of end up blending together, but the Richard Ramirez one, for whatever reason, really got to me.
Well, I was actually about to say, and I stopped myself, which this is a perfect opportunity to mention it. My go-to thing that I was going to say was, oh yeah, I've always thought he was like maybe one of your favorite serial killers.
Really?
And then it's a moment like that where the phrase favorite serial killer is implying that like this is like a fun story to tell and totally negates all the horrible shit that actually happened. So
absolutely.
But so what I meant to say is I feel like he's always been someone that you think before everyone else, but even the phrasing there. It's
No,
like, just
but
be
you're
careful
right.
with your words.
And the YouTuber that Sarah Hawkinson made a really good point too. She caught herself because she said, well, you guys know I love true crime. And then she was like, okay, like the phrasing alone is rough. Like, I don't love true crime. It's like, but we all say that, right? Like we know what we mean, but yeah, you're right. Like the verbiage around it is tough too. So,
well,
yes.
You can even extrapolate that just into like other big problems going on in the world right now, where if you're saying like, oh, well, you know what I mean. And it's like, okay, but like whether or not you meant it, this is how maybe you shouldn't phrase it anymore. You know, times are changing.
I'm a big believer of language matters. And I think, culturally, socially, language really, really matters. And I know I think it, but it's true. It's the truth. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the truth. I think my opinion is, but language matters. And so, yeah, exactly. I think that's something to like catch ourselves on. And like you said, if we listen to our old episodes, we're probably like, oh, yikes. Some of this stuff is probably not.
I'm sure if we ever, even like when I make friends, like, and they're like, oh, well, listen to some of your episodes. And I'm like, please do not. Like, and part of it is like, it's weird for them to be able to listen back to a show of mine at all. But like, I know that I've grown a lot, and whatever, I don't even want to know what I've said in some of the early episodes, but I'm already just so embarrassed. So I'm like, please don't.
I'm already embarrassed about this episode because I feel like people are going to be like, God, they're fucking annoying.
I know so many PSAs. I'm sorry.
I know. So, I mean, I feel like I should stop because you guys get it. And if you don't, then like, you're not going to be convinced by another sentence out of my mouth. But
amen.
Okay, point being, Richard Ramirez, he had these groupies, and they would show up to his trial in hordes, and they swooned when he flirted with them from the stand. He wore these little sunglasses, and he would, like, flirt with... So I know you're saying, like, he's... Like, you don't see him necessarily as, like, a Romeo type, but...
I must have been thinking about Charles Manson or someone then.
Well, he also had his own... The Manson girls, you know, so...
It's wild.
Who knows? I mean... It doesn't matter what I think he looks like, but point is, some people thought he was very attractive. The media even dubbed him Death Row Romeo. So he really got it cooking. And there was one particular story that stuck out to me as kind of the intro into this whole phenomenon. And this is from a YouTube series called Crime Viral. They also wrote an article that had more details. So this is a really cool source. But they talked about a woman named Cynthia Hayden. And she was a juror on the Richard Ramirez case. And I guess she started to fall in love with him as she was a juror on this case. I know. And Ramirez would make eye contact and stare longingly at her during the trial. And basically what he was doing is realizing he had someone on his side and was trying to manipulate her. I mean, obviously, like from a third party, we can obviously see that is what's going on. So on Valentine's Day, she gifted him a cupcake with "I love you" iced on top of it.
That is so beyond inappropriate.
So inappropriate, right? So thankfully she was dismissed, and he was ultimately sentenced to death despite her having been on this jury. But their relationship didn't stop there. She repeatedly visited him in prison and even brought her parents to introduce them to him.
Wow. Wow.
That got me. According to a website called sinisterseries.com, Cindy told Richard Ramirez that she had fallen deeply in love with him, and soon she was making TV appearances claiming he was innocent and that he had been possessed by the devil when he performed his crimes, so it wasn't really his fault and he shouldn't be put to death. But at the same time, anytime she was questioned about what would happen if he got out, she said, I think he would do exactly what he did before. Like, I have a job, you have a job. His job is killing people. It's what he was trained to do.
Sorry, what? So hang on a second. So
yeah,
she thinks that's his actual, like, this is what gets him through the day. Leave him alone. Like, he needs this to be able to go to sleep at night.
It's
what?
Monday.
Yeah.
I need a cup of coffee. He's going to go stab a few people. Yeah, the logic there I don't get, especially because she said he's innocent and then said, but anyway, he needs to keep murdering people. That's what he does. Although I don't know that she was even saying he needs to keep doing it. I think she was saying there's a reason he's in jail. Because if he gets out, he'll do this, but he shouldn't be put to death because it was the devil's fault.
See, it's things like this where I also wonder, like, how harshly should I be judging these people? Because there's clearly a mental disturbance somewhere where, I'm like, am I even, is it even okay for me to be judging them in my mind so intensely when there's clearly like something not right?
To be critiquing it. Yes. No, and I totally get that too. It's hard to say, and especially because a lot of these become almost a gray area of, I don't know how to put it, but some of them are really wild like this, and some of them like are very aware that this is inappropriate and don't go on camera and don't talk about it. And so you wonder, like, where's the line of mental illness? Where's the line of like, is this something we should be treating? Is this something we should be addressing, or should we just be vilifying? It's so hard to say. But I do have some bad news for Cynthia. And I have some bad news for us, which is that she was not the only one who had fallen in love with Richard Ramirez.
Yeah.
In fact, according to the San Francisco Chronicle, during his 23 years on death row, Richard Ramirez received bags upon bags of fan mail, mostly from women.
Whoa.
According to Crime Viral, one admirer who remains anonymous said of Ramirez, "He is good looking and I loved his big hands. The thrill, I know, the thrill of danger of going up to a state penitentiary made it all worth it because to me it was like a dream come true to face one of the world's most feared men." And then added, "Like my mom used to say, you can love someone, but you don't have to like them." I'm like,
girl,
I don't think that's what mommy meant. I don't think it is.
See, that should put some fear in your heart as a new mom of like, what are you going to tell Leota that she's just going to fucking roll with?
I know.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
Wow, be careful. Language matters, right? Yikes. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Can you repeat that? Can you repeat
Of course. He is good looking and I loved his big hands. The thrill of danger of going up to a state penitentiary made it all worth it because to me it was like a dream come true to face one of the world's most feared men. Like my mom used to say, you can love someone, but you don't have to like them.
I feel like that's some type of, I mean, I am not the expert here, but I'm purely speculating that for her to have mentioned twice in that one statement that she loved the adrenaline rush of being near someone who was so scary. I wonder if that's kind of my theory earlier of like, oh, but he wouldn't hurt me. Or I wonder if it was like some sort of empowerment thing of like, oh, I can look him in the eye and I got away with it.
You're touching on like 4 different theories of what this could be. And it's very interesting because I think some of them do converge like that.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a list later of like possible reasons a psychologist thinks that this happens, and you are really kind of like touching on a few of them, which is super interesting.
I mean, I have a psychology degree, so
yeah,
and do. I use it like once every 3 years, but I'm pretty on top of it when I do. So also, do you ever mention anything about men having this happen to them? Because I know there is significantly less female serial killers, but have any of them been pursued? Like,
yes, there have been a few. I don't really talk about it because it wasn't really there weren't many sources on it. But one of the TikToks that the YouTuber I mentioned earlier has is a TikTok that's called like the hottest serial killers or something, and it like goes through, and there was a woman in there, and I looked her up, and I guess she had men who were like trying to get with her while she was in prison. So it definitely does happen. I don't think there is many. I mean, there definitely so few. Are not as many examples. Yeah. So I don't really focus on that, but I probably should look into it to see if it.
I mean, it's probably such a small number. I don't know how accurate it would be, but I didn't know if we should like consider this like across the board for all people or just women.
It's definitely it's weird because it's
or gay men. Like
could be too.
That would be an interesting study in the future.
Whether, how gender plays into it, because, you know, obviously we believe gender is a construct because it is. But, you know, it is weird how this does happen in a power dynamic way of it's usually people who are identifying as women kind of going after or lusting after men who've killed women. So it's like,
yeah, it feels like gender is certainly at play. So
for sure.
I wonder if there would be a proportional in some way amount of gay men, or I don't know, because I would think like, oh, well, women are terrified of men. But I would imagine at the time of these serial killers, like gay men were also pretty terrified because LGBT issues were not the same.
Gay men were like, what the fuck? No. You know what I mean?
I like to think they were also like, what the fuck? But
had a little logic, but
I'm trying to think in terms of like all groups were relatively oppressed at the time. So I wonder how any of them would feel facing or having the thrill of looking at a dangerous man and getting away with it.
I don't know.
Again, sorry for the ramble.
You should probably go back to grad school and get your psych degree and really write a dissertation on this, because
nah.
Okay. Anyway, next up, we can just ponder over it and pontificate on our own without having a degree,
Fair enough. I'm sorry for all the rambles. You really just picked like such a chef's kiss of a
I
conversation.
was like, oh, this is such a short story. And then I was like, what am I talking about? This is like a talker,
This is a good one.
So anyway, this admirer kind of gave this horrible little mental montage of why she loves Richard Ramirez. He's dangerous. He has big hands, yada, yada. Even more disturbingly, hordes of women would send Ramirez, who was, by the way, very public about his foot fetish, photos of their feet so that he could fantasize over them.
Oh.
So really playing into that.
Mm-hmm.
The Medium piece I mentioned earlier delves into two of Ramirez's most notorious fanatics. So we've already kind of gone over the first example, who was Cynthia Hayden, the juror. But even though she introduced her parents to him and all that, it was not a long-lasting relationship. He had more serious relationships with two other women.
Yikes.
Yeah. So the first is Doreen Loy, and the second is Christine Lee. So we're going to start with Doreen because chronologically she came first. So Doreen is a former journalist from Burbank, California. Shout out, who described herself as a Catholic virgin in one interview.
Okay.
She is best known, however, for being Richard Ramirez's wife.
Oh.
She learned about him after watching his arrest on television and wrote him 75 letters before he agreed to let her visit him in prison.
Wow.
And this is how she describes falling for him. Quote, "This was a feeling that began from as long ago as the night before he was arrested and police broke into the television show I was watching to broadcast his picture. Looking back, I see it was a turning point for me. They show this mugshot in the middle of Dallas, and I saw something in his eyes. Something that captivated me. It wasn't as if I knew him, but it was something in his eyes. Maybe the vulnerability? I don't really know."
Okay. Well, all I can think of is the fact that she's a Catholic nun who is certainly sinning in some way. She's
not a nun. She's a virgin.
Oh, virgin. In my mind, this whole time she was a nun. I was
wow, that would be a Shondaland level drama waiting to happen. All right.
I was like, why aren't we talking about that more? Okay, just a Catholic virgin. Got it.
Just a Catholic virgin.
Still sinning as far as I'm concerned. But wow.
She's a nun.
I was like, I feel like that should be like a main character in the Richard Ramirez story. Wow. You can tell that she's really enamored with him to be using language like, oh, like the cops broke into my TV channel, so I had to, watch them go through this whole thing on TV.
It was love at first sight. I saw something in his eyes. It's like, oh, yikes. He was on your news channel as having killed a 9-year-old, but okay. Yeah, I guess we love him now. And around 1988, Ramirez, I guess, was also at least playing along because he proposed, and they tied the knot on October 3rd, 1996.
Okay. Wow.
Wow.
That's all I got.
I know. It's hard to even say anything productive at this point, but at first she was a loud supporter of his, even claiming she'd die by suicide if they executed him as planned. But then in 2010, they kind of mysteriously parted ways. And it was for unknown reasons, but it's speculated. There are a couple theories as to why this happened. So it's speculated that they split due to, this is kind of the main theory, due to Ramirez's lack of empathy toward the murder and rape of 9-year-old Mei Lung. And part of the theory is that, or the theory is that she found out for sure that he did perpetrate this crime. Is that the right word? Perpetrate. Is that a word?
Well, yeah, he was the
perpetrator. Okay. Wow. I was like, perpetuate? Cyclical? I'm so confused. Okay.
I feel like my own brain was trying to get back together to help you.
I felt like I was saying something important. I was like, I don't want to say the wrong word, but yeah, the theory is that she either found out he had perpetrated this crime against a 9-year-old, or she brought it up and he didn't seem fazed. So
I feel like that conversation should have happened way before a wedding, but okay.
Especially because he proposed in 88 and they got married in 96. So
right, they had a lot of time to talk about this.
A lot of time. She wrote him 75 letters. You think that would have been addressed. Another theory is that she found out he had 12 other girlfriends, which he did. So either way.
I think that one's I'm going to put my money on that one because it feels more recent. And
it feels more shocking considering everyone else already knew about the Mei Lung case.
I feel like she went in after years knowing about a 9-year-old child getting brutally assaulted by him. And that was fine. See, that's what I was talking about with the chessboard guy with his wife, where I was like, are you just actively doing everything you can to ignore the bad parts and then it's the good parts are all yeah, like, are you just like really good at lying to yourself, or do you like, or how do you justify all these red flags?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Either they think they had an argument or a falling out, or she couldn't get him to admit that he felt bad about the 9-year-old's murder, or that she found out he had 12 girlfriends. So either way.
I feel like that was more new information and probably the reason she left. Which, like, by the way, if you only left because he cheated on you and not because of everything else, like, your priorities, I'm not going to tell you what to do with your life, but maybe straighten them out.
Maybe
think about it.
Maybe start journaling, you know?
Yeah.
There was a line in the crime viral video where she was like, who ever could have expected a serial killer to cheat on his wife? And it's like, very good point. Like, what do you expect? Yeah. Like, he's a sociopathic serial killer and you're shocked that he cheated on you. So how dare he? But so after Richard Ramirez and Doreen divorced, Ramirez began talking to Christine Lee. Now, Christine was a young single mother of 2 who said that she liked him because he, quote, treated her right.
Okay.
So maybe a little insight. I found out more about Christine on Distractify's website. She apparently was interviewed alongside another one of Richard Ramirez's other admirers, and I want to put it out here right now. The irony is not lost on me. The other admirer's name was Eva. So I found absolutely no way to address this without just head-on covering the fact that these 2 admirers interviewed together are named Christine and Eva.
Fair
enough. 2 names that are not that are common, but not. I haven't really stumbled upon them together like this.
I feel like you're the only
story.
Christine Eva duo I've ever heard of until this moment,
especially in a true crime context. Exactly. So apparently, the 2 of them were discussing their infatuation with Richard Ramirez, and I want to point out, Eva at this point was 16 years old, a child.
Wow.
I don't feel even super comfortable that she was interviewed at all about this because she's a child, but okay. In the interview, the 2 discussed their relationship with the Night Stalker. Eva claimed that she and Richard Ramirez exchanged poems initially for a school project. But
girl, what? Okay.
What? But first of all, if that's true, your teacher needs to sit down. And second of all, is that a lie? Because it sounds like a lie.
Yeah.
I don't know. But apparently they started exchanging poetry for a school project, but she became infatuated with him, not because of his looks, but because he, quote, broke away from the system. Oh, boy. She's 16. That's the kind of thing I'm saying is like, she's 16. You can't like blame her for that, right? Like, get her away from the serial killer.
I feel like it's, I don't know. I always find myself in like a mixed bag situation where like I don't want to blame someone who's underage and didn't know better, but also like, where are the parents? What is going on here?
That's what I'm saying. Like, put her in timeout for a minute. Let her frontal lobe develop a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's not there yet. All right. And like, this man is clearly taking advantage, right?
Yeah, definitely. And when I think about being 16, I think about how many stupid, very
dumb.
clearly stupid decisions I made. And if any of them were like wrapped around love, forget it. So like, I feel like she didn't stand a chance, especially if no one was being like, yo, let's maybe not mail this person anymore, or this number, or let's not call this person anymore.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So, you know, who knows what the actual origin story behind that was. But I see red flags all around. As for Christine Lee, she was really tight-lipped about her relationship with Richard, so we don't know too much about her. It's actually extremely difficult. And this is what I was mentioning earlier of like, some people recognize how unhinged this looks, and they do not want to be kind of in the public eye. Like, they know how bad it looks. And so it's kind of like,
so like they were going to get
from the media.
So like they were fine with it until they were getting called out. Is that kind of,
So that's an interesting angle too, because it's like, well, is that different? Is that the same thing?
No, that's totally a different angle, because this whole time I've been telling myself like, well, something must not, they must not know the difference, but they clearly know the difference enough to know that they'd be judged for it.
Exactly. And some people really hide. And so we really don't know much at all about Christine, except that she said like he treated her right and that's why she liked him. There was one interview that exists on YouTube where she said she was engaged to him, but she would not admit if she loved him on air. And all we know is that when he died of cancer in prison in 2013, it was reported in that story that he and Christine were engaged. And that's pretty much all we know. So now there's serial killer and sadist Phillip Carl Jablonski, and this is a wild tale, okay? So this fella was convicted of brutally murdering 5 women in California and Utah between 1978 and 1991. He was sentenced to only 12 years in prison. Don't even get me started on that. And while he was in prison, he put out an ad for, quote, Lonely Hearts Prisoners.
Okay.
Yeah. So wouldn't you know it, he got a response from a woman named Carol Spadoni. They became romantic pen pals, and to Spadoni's delight, he seemed just as eager to pursue a relationship with her as she did with him. So apparently the fact that he was in prison for murdering his previous wife didn't faze her, which seems to be a running trend here. And according to allthat'sinteresting.com, over the course of the next few years, Carol and Jablonski got to know each other, and in 1982, they tied the knot in San Quentin prison. But things sort of changed for Carol. The romance did not last for her because she decided to end their marriage a little while in. We're not really sure. There's kind of an 8-year gap where we don't know at what point she ended the relationship, but all we know is that she told a friend she found Jablonski, quote, weird. Like, you already married the guy, but okay.
Yeah. I feel like everyone's making calls way late into this.
Yeah. It's like, you did not listen to your girlfriends at the slumber party who were like
what were they saying after
flags.
What were they saying on the first few dinners after you told them you were seeing somebody? Like, you didn't.
Right. That didn't stick out, but I guess 7 years in, she told a friend he was weird. But she couldn't fully escape him because in 1990, she found out that Jablonski was about to be released for, get this, good behavior.
What?
I know.
Okay.
Big yikes. So she started to worry for her safety and for the safety of her mother, with whom she was living at the time. And meanwhile, I guess Jablonski, despite their breakup, had assumed that he would be living with Carol when he was out of prison, so he had all of his belongings sent to her home.
So immediately this makes me think more psychologically about why they fall for these men in general. And I feel like this just goes to prove that, like, maybe it's because it's a thrill, an unattainable thrill, or like there's
safety.
Yeah, it's like, even you said earlier that someone was sending like feet pictures to Ramirez, and I feel like that could somehow be some sort of like, there's an arousal and like getting to be in control sexually with someone who can't overpower you because they're locked up. And I
ding,
feel like
ding, 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 ding. You're hitting like the fifth thing. I feel like you hit every possible theory and just kind of combine them all in one, because that's exactly one of the things is like, oh, there's this thrill of the danger, but there's also a safety element of their behind bars.
It's cautioned danger, or it's what's cautious. What my mom always used to call herself, a cautious risk taker, which was like she's fine with like a safety to her danger, or a danger aspect to her safety, in like in a way that is controlled, and she feels like she's doing something fun and kooky, but like at the end of the day she knows she's going to be fine.
I think that's where it's sort of like that line of like, oh, it's a quirky thing for people to say on the internet versus like, oh, you're really, yeah, exactly. There's that
and now
danger
this poor
element.
And this poor woman probably thought like, oh, he's always going to be locked up. I can like either play this facade or really let myself feel like I'm into him, knowing that I never have to truly face him anyway.
Well, and you know,
he's showing up at my house.
But he was only locked up for 12 years. And so I feel like she technically would have known he wouldn't be there forever, but there was probably, at least subconsciously, a little bit of like, oh, well, it's fine. He's in jail, and not really thinking it through. Well,
also, if he got out on good behavior, she probably thought like, oh, I have a certain amount of time to end things.
That's true.
And now all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, like he thinks we are for sure in love. And even if I am currently in love, I didn't expect to ever have to.
This is becoming too real.
Yeah. The danger zone has really broadened itself all of a sudden.
Yes, it did. And like, to be fair, he was in prison for like 10 years. So it's not like, oh, he got out after like 2 years and she was totally shook. It's sort of like, yes, it is earlier. But so in any case, he assumed he would be living with his wife. She was like, crap, I don't think he should be free and I don't feel safe. Mm-hmm. So he had all his stuff sent to her. But then Carol and her mother managed to convince a friend to move his items out before he got out of jail. So she was like, let's get all this shit out. And she even contacted his parole officer to let him know her concerns and say, we had this stuff sent out of my house. So the officer forbade Jablonski from visiting her home, which was in Burlingame, California, under any circumstances. Unfortunately, the following year, a tragedy struck when Jablonski disobeyed the orders from his parole officer and paid Carol a visit.
Great.
He stabbed and shot both Carol and her 72-year-old mother, Ava Peterson, killing both of them. And he proceeded to sexually assault her mother, Ava, after her death. Yeah. There's a lot of layers here as far as like getting out on good behavior. And there's just a lot happening here. But Jablonski was ultimately found guilty of these 2 murders and at least 3 other additional murders and sentenced to death. But he died in prison in December of 2019 at age 73. And those are just 2, like I had plans to kind of go over all the examples, but like this is as far as I could go because the notes would have been so long. Mm-hmm. There's so freaking many. I could probably, honestly, I could probably do an episode on every serial killer's groupies as its own episode. You know,
honestly, I would appreciate it. I feel like if you ever need like a last minute topic or something, or maybe like it's not even last minute, if you just want to cover it again, I'm telling you with open arms. I feel like it's such a good lesson to keep reminding ourselves of. Yes,
it's a really good point. It's like the darker side. I know it sounds so stupid, but like the darker side of true crime, of like the really kind of terrible like emotional damage you can do. Or yeah, it's scary. So I know those are the 2 very brief examples I shared, but I did want to go over the Hybristophilia part, like just the actual mental illness part of it. And I guess, you know what? I do have a note here, Em, about men succumbing to its effects. Here we go. Apparently I kept this in. I thought I deleted it. So it's worth noting that although it's predominantly women that are affected by hysterophilia, men can succumb to its effects too. And according to CNN, Susan Atkins, a member of the Manson family who got a life sentence for her role in the Sharon Tate LaBianca murders, married 2 different men in prison who were infatuated with her.
Whoa.
So I guess it's really can be both ways.
I guess so. I mean,
probably always.
Maybe it's just wild then that means instead of it just being like a women's issue, I don't know, if it's not exclusively a female experience, that means this is just like something that happens across humanity, which was wild.
It is.
Like it's just a thing that across the board
that can
affect
like
people,
hook us in, affect us. And I'm gonna go into actually like what possible reasons are that this affects not us, but us as humans. But first, I wanted to make an interesting fun fact note, which is that according to Crime Viral, there is a letter writing organization called Human Rights. That's WRITES, and it hooks up members with inmates on death row in the USA. It was founded in 2000, and you can pay an annual membership subscription of $30 and be basically connected to death row inmates and write letters to one another.
Wow.
So fun fact. Apparently there are currently more than 1,500 members who use this service, and they also offer, this is interesting, counseling sessions for those who have befriended an inmate who is scheduled for execution.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's grim, but also...
That is so grim. The website reads, typically your coordinator would be in touch with you several times before the date and would try to be available to you on the evening of an execution.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
It's heavy. It's so grim. It's so heavy. And in an article on psychologytoday.com, professor of forensic psychology, Catherine Ramsland, PhD, she goes over what she thinks are some of the reasons that women who have dated serial killers do so. And I'm going to list them. And I feel like this is where we get into kind of some of the stuff that you have touched on. So here we go. There's a list of, 6 different possible reasons that Dr. Ramsland believes could be reasons for this behavior. So they may believe they can change a man as cruel and powerful as a serial killer. So that's one of the ultimate theories is like, oh, I can change him. I can save him. The savior complex. Exactly. Number 2, they see the little boy that the killer once was and seek to nurture him.
So like a Freudian situation there.
Yes, precisely. Number 3, they hope to share in the media spotlight or get a book or movie deal. So that's a very different angle, I would say.
That one feels less like an actual infatuation and more like a personal gain.
Completely. Exactly. I had the same thought. Number 4, they believe they are dating the perfect boyfriend. And I think that goes more into like they're behind bars, they're manly or masculine, what have you, in a traditional sense, because they're angry and violent. They're behind bars, so they're safe. One of the examples that talked about this was like they don't have to cook or clean or get hit like they were in an abusive relationship in the past. It's sort of like
you can have the romance without someone getting in the way.
Exactly, Em. That's exactly it. So number 5 is they are unable to find love in normal ways. So maybe this is just, I don't know how else to put that, except this is maybe just the only way they've been able to make a romantic connection with somebody. And then finally, they may seek relationships that cannot traditionally be consummated. So maybe
like the Catholic Virgin.
The Virgin, who you thought was a nun.
Hey,
maybe they're not looking for sex.
That's and that's maybe that's a good twist of like, for my convictions, I don't know if I want to have sex, or maybe I'm not someone who wants to have sex, and this is a good way to let them down easy. That like, we couldn't have sex anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
You can have that relationship without even having to turn them down sexually. I don't know.
Which and by the way, I don't think that's what asexual people should or do deal with. I'm just saying. Of
course not. No.
I'm not I don't want people to think that like that's
what
I amount asexuality to. But at the time, before other sexualities were being discussed, I'm sure it was easier to be like, oh, well, if only we could, but you're behind bars. And then you don't have to tell anyone that maybe you just weren't into that.
Exactly. So there's that theory of like, well, maybe some, I mean, and again, this is like some people, maybe like a couple people thought, oh, well, or didn't even think, but subconsciously were like, oh, well, I wouldn't have to be physical with this person, which, I mean, understandable if that's not something you're looking for. Maybe that was part of it. Then there's this woman named Sheila Eisenberg. She's the author of Women Who Love Men Who Kill, a book I probably want to read.
Will read.
And she explained, quote, if the guy's behind bars, it's always exciting, adding, it's easier to get a date or get attention from serial killers than, say, Brad Pitt. Pitt is going to ignore your letter. He's not going to boast about your letter, but this guy is. He's probably reading his letters and responding to them because it puffs him up and raises his status in his own eyes. So there's that element, too, of like, oh...
an attainable celebrity.
A celebrity who is attainable. Precisely.
Yeah. Oh, that was Gio's theory, I think.
Sorry. Juniper definitely just clawed Gio in the head, and
cool.
Gio was not having it. Anyway, so those are the kind of theories that are floating around. Some of the other ones are what you said earlier of like, people like that thrill of the bad boy.
Without having to deal with the thrill.
Without having to be in the violent way of them. Exactly. And so, you know, there's nobody totally understands, but those are the theories. And so that's kind of it. Like, there's really not too much else that just explains it or gets to the bottom of it. There are just a lot of theories. And I did want to add at the end here, this is my last bullet, if you need support in any way, because I feel like this was kind of a heavier topic than I really intended at first, you can call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-4673 or visit RAIN with 2Ns.org to chat online. And I just like to throw that out there whenever there's kind of a very
anything about trauma,
heavy, traumatic episode
also,
like this.
What is the name again of the case, like the mental?
Oh, Hybristophilia. So it's with an Hybristophilia. And aphilia is sort of a considered a sexual disorder. So essentially, Hybristophilia is the sexual disorder of being attracted to people who commit violent crime.
Just in case you're someone out there who felt like this related to you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And again, like,
Who
this
knows?
is clearly something that has a name, has, you know, a lot of baggage, traumatic and otherwise attached to it. So I don't want anyone to feel like shamed by this episode by any means. But yeah, it's just it's a fascinating topic. I feel like I just scratched the surface, and I feel like we went on all sorts of weird directions with it, but
many a tangent. By the way, like, it sounds like most of this, like all else in the world, is caused by and also encouraged by toxic masculinity. I feel like that was fully the patriarchy there of like, oh, women are falling in love with serial killers because they don't want to deal with men in real life, or because they wouldn't feel safe if they weren't locked up. Like, what does that tell you? That's a scary concept in some ways. So this was probably, even though one of your darker topics, what a good topic.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I listen, you request and I deliver once in 100 years. Once every 100 times you request something.
Thank you.
Bingo. Here we go.
You keep me on my toes. And I also, I mean, that really was, I do feel like we went on a lot of tangents and all of them were kind of heavy, but. And
like defending ourselves, I felt a little like, I don't want it to sound like we're just like, not us,
making
though.
Ourselves sound good or something. Yeah. If you for some reason feel like we were not, I don't know, if you disagree with anything we said, we definitely want feedback. But it was such a weird fine line of like, we definitely need to mention it as true crime, quote, entertainers, but also like, hopefully we didn't make it too much about us, but we also wanted to make sure that, you know, we set our piece. So
again, the line, it's always so hard to find that line, you know, to toe the line in the right way. And I readily admit that we don't always do it. So
yeah, we're happy to be checked. So we want to be good people and do the right thing and be as respectful as possible.
That's all we want. We really do.
That's all our intention. So if we ever stray from that, please like go into your concerns and judgments with that as like a bullet point.
At the very least, please know we're trying, even if it's misguided.
Yes. Well done, Christine. I do hope you cover more stories like that eventually.
Oh,
like
good. I'm so glad.
Cases.
I mean,
because it's almost like the aftermath of a case. I was going to say,
it touches on so many different cases at once. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, good job.
No, thank you. Well, yours was fun too. This was kind of a bananagrams episode.
We talked earlier about range, and we really went from the squonk all the way to some really intense stuff. So
I think we went all the way from Lenwood to Theodore Geisel Seuss, and back again.
And we ended up at the Night Stalker. So you tell us how wild of a ride this episode was.
Oh boy.
And
that's
why
we
drink.